Some nights I still hear them coming through the snow. 5 ghosts learning to walk again, stumbling toward a man who'd forgotten how to pray. February in Montana. Don't forgive mistakes. Cold so deep it'll freeze your breath before it leaves your mouth. The kind of winter that buries secrets and sometimes unearths them. Elwood Taggart was chopping wood when he heard the sound of dying. At first he thought it was wind. Then he saw what the storm had delivered, 5 shapes moving through the white, barefoot, holding each other upright like fence posts about to fall, blood on snow, torn cotton shifts, rope burns still weeping. They collapsed at his fence line, 40 yards from warmth, and the eldest lifted her head. "Please," she said, lips cracked and crusted. "Don't leave me to starve." He'd lived alone 14 years, buried his wife and baby girl in snow just like this, swore he'd never care about another living soul. But mercy don't ask permission. It just kicks down your door and makes you choose. By dawn, they'd either be free, or Elwood Taggart would be hanging from the nearest tree. Hollowbrook Station sat 40 miles from anywhere that mattered. Just a log cabin, a barn, a well, and a man who preferred it that way. Elwood Taggart's morning looked like every other for the past 14 years. Chop wood, feed the horse, eat standing over the stove, sleep with the rifle. The cabin had 1 chair, 1 plate, 1 cup, mended with horsehair twine where the handle had cracked. He kept it on the shelf and never used it, couldn't bear to put his lips where hers had been. Singing Bird's blanket stayed folded on the high shelf, untouched. Some things you kept sacred by not touching them at all. He was splitting his 5th log when the sound came. At first, wind. Had to be wind. But wind don't stumble. Wind don't gasp like that. Elwood straightened, axe still raised. Through the falling snow, movement. Not deer, not wolf, human. 5 shapes, maybe 40 yards out, coming slow as death itself. He grabbed the rifle from the porch rail, heart hammering against ribs that hadn't cared about much in a long time. His breath plumed white in the cold. 2 fingers on his left hand, the ones the frostbite took in '64, ached like they always did before a storm. They collapsed at the fence, all 5 at once, like puppets with cut strings. Elwood stood frozen. Not my problem. Let them pass, keep your head down. He'd lived by that rule since the day he buried his family. Worked fine for 14 years, then one of them lifted her head, dark eyes, hollow cheeks, lips split and bleeding. She tried to speak, choked on it, tried again. "Please." The word came out broken. "Don't leave me to starve." His daughter's last words. Different voice, same plea. The rifle lowered. He was moving before he decided to, boots crunching through snow, each step feeling like walking toward a grave he'd already dug. Got close enough to see details he wished he couldn't. Young, all of them, 16 to maybe 25. Indigenous features, Blackfeet, if he had to guess. Wearing nothing but thin cotton shifts torn shoulder to hem. No coats, no shoes, feet black with frostbite. Rope burns on every wrist, some still bleeding. The eldest, the one who'd spoken, looked up at him, not begging, not afraid, measuring, like she was deciding if he was worth the effort of staying alive for. "How long you been walking?" His voice came out rust rough from disuse. 2 days, she said in broken English. No stop. 40 miles, barefoot. He looked south, saw nothing through the snow. "Someone chasing you?" The third one, younger, fiercer, spit blood in the snow and glared at him. "Everyone." The second woman flinched when he shifted his weight. The fourth trembled from fever, eyes rolling. The youngest had her eyes closed, lips blue as a corpse. That's when he saw it. The eldest's torn shoulder showed a mark, burned into the skin. 3 letters, raised in red, STC, Slade's Timber Camp. Ah, hell. Everyone knew that name. Garrick Slade, the man who owned half of Montana and didn't ask permission for the other half. And these women had his mark branded on them like cattle. The eldest watched him process it, watched him calculate the cost. "You help us?" she asked. Every instinct screamed no. Slade didn't forgive. Slade didn't forget. Men who crossed him ended up floating in the river or swinging from trees. But that cup sat on his shelf. That blanket stayed folded. And his daughter's voice still echoed in the space between his heartbeats. "Get inside," he said. "Quick." "You help us?" "I'm thinking about it. Move before I change my mind." He didn't know it yet, but the moment he opened that door, he'd bought himself a war. The women huddled by the stove like refugees from hell itself. Elwood barred the door, heavy oak beam across iron brackets, and closed the shutters. No sense advertising. He filled a basin with water, heated over the fire, set it on the floor. "For your feet. Warm them slow, or you'll lose the toes." They stared at the basin like it might bite. He poured coffee. Only had the 1 cup, the mended one. His hand hesitated over it, then he gave it to the eldest. She took it with both hands, careful as holding a baby bird. Bread came next, salt pork, dried apples from last fall, small portions. It was all he had. They ate like wolves, no words, no manners, just survival. The sound of chewing filled the cabin louder than the wind outside. The youngest, the one with blue lips, drew something in the frost on the window. A bird. Simple lines, but clear. Elwood stopped moving, stared at it. "Singing bird," he said, voice barely there. "That was my wife's name." The girl looked up at him, didn't speak but pointed at him, then at herself, then at the bird. The eldest translated, voice soft. "She say, you have ghosts too, like us." Something in his chest cracked, not broke, just shifted. "Barn's out back," he said, turning away before they could see his face. "Hey, blankets. Warmer than it looks. You'll stay there tonight." "You not keep us here? Inside?" the eldest asked. "Folks see smoke from one chimney, they think it's me alone. 2 chimneys, they get curious." The fierce one, the one who'd spit blood, glared at him. "You ashamed to be seen with us?" "I'm trying to keep you alive." He stepped outside to check the horses. Really, he needed space to think, needed air that didn't smell like fear and desperation. Just one night, he told himself. Storm passes, they move on, everything goes back to quiet. But even then, he knew it was a lie. He looked toward the barn. Faint lantern light leaked through the cracks. 5 women who'd walked 40 miles barefoot through a blizzard to escape something worse than freezing to death. He looked south. No movement yet through the snow, but Slade's men would come. They always did. And when they came, Elwood would have to choose, stand or step aside. Inside, he found the youngest still awake, sitting by the dying fire. She'd drawn more pictures in the frost. A house, a man, a woman, a child. Then one more. All of them crossed out. She looked at him with eyes too old for her face. "I know," he said quietly. "Me too." A sound outside, boot scraping wood. The women froze. Fire crackled. Silence pressed down like a hand over a mouth. Then, knock, 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 hard, insistent. "Taggart!" A voice he recognized. Murphy, the freight driver from Fort Benton. Nosy bastard who talked too much and listened too well. "Open up! Just want a word!" Elwood put a finger to his lips. The women flattened against the wall. He grabbed his rifle, cracked the door open, body blocking the view inside. Murphy grinned from under his hat, breath steaming. "Saw extra smoke tonight, El. You got company?" "Burning green wood. Makes it smoke more." "Uh-huh." Murphy leaned, trying to see past him. "You hear about Slade's girls? 5 of them escaped his camp 2 days back, offering $100 apiece for their return." His grin widened. "That's 500 reasons to keep an eye out." $500. In 1876, that was enough to make honest men into hunters. "Haven't seen nobody." Murphy shifted his weight, boots crunching snow. "Mind if I warm up a spell? Cold as Satan's." The rifle moved, just slightly. Murphy's hands came up, but his eyes narrowed. Sure. You take care now, El." He mounted his horse, then paused. "But if you do see something, well, a man's got to eat, right?" Elwood watched him disappear into the white. The clock was ticking now. Murphy would talk, word would spread, and Slade would come. Dawn broke gray and mean. Elwood was in the barn, teaching the women English words they might need. Hide. Quiet. Run. The eldest, she'd told him her name was Marjorie, though he suspected it wasn't her real one, repeated each word carefully. The others followed. Even the mute one, Beatrice, mouthed the shapes. He gave them his old boots, too big, but better than nothing. Spare canvas coats that smelled like horse and tobacco. "Why you do this?" Marjorie asked. "We nothing to you." Maybe that's why. When you got nothing left to lose, mercy becomes easy. It's when you have something worth keeping that choosing right gets hard. The pregnant one, Oswin, doubled over suddenly, gasping. Beatrice was beside her instantly, hands gentle, making a poultice from herbs she'd found in the barn. Elwood noticed her skill. "You a healer?" Beatrice didn't answer, couldn't or wouldn't, but nodded once. Then he heard it. Horses, many. "Root cellar," he said. "Under the barn floor. Don't come out till I say." The trapdoor opened with a groan. Marjorie went last, looked at him from the darkness below. "You die for us?" "Let's hope it don't come to that." He closed the trap, covered it with hay. Outside, 8 mounted men arranged themselves in a half circle. At their center sat Garrick Slade. Fur coat, polished boots, gold tooth catching the weak sun when he smiled. "Elwood Taggart," Slade called out, all false warmth. "Been a long time, friend. Heard you might have seen some wayward property of mine." Elwood stood on the porch, rifle cradled. "Ain't seen nobody, Slade." Now, Murphy says different, says you had extra smoke last night." Slade's smile thinned. "And I'm missing 5 women who ran from my camp. Coincidence?" "Must be." Slade's smile dropped like a mask. "Here's how this works, El. I have legal contracts. These women signed on for labor. 3 years each. They ran before their time was up. That makes them thieves. Federal law says I can retrieve stolen property." "Women ain't property. The law says different." Another horse approached. Marshal Cyrus Holt, 38, clean-shaven, union coat still pressed despite the cold. Federal badge caught the light. Slade's smile returned. "Perfect timing, Marshal. I was just explaining federal contract law to Mr. Taggart." Holt dismounted, formal as a funeral. "Mr. Taggart, I have warrants for the return of 5 indentured laborers. Mr. Slade holds valid contracts signed at Fort Benton last August. Are they here?" "No." "Mind if I search the premises?" "Yeah, I do mind. I have legal authority, and I got 40 acres of private property. Your authority ends at that fence line." Slade leaned forward in his saddle. "See, Marshal, he's harboring fugitives. That's a federal crime." Holt studied Elwood. Something passed between them, veteran to veteran. "Mr. Taggart, I understand you served. I respect that. But the law is clear. If you're hiding these women, you're obstructing justice. That carries a penalty of— I know what it carries." "Then, I can't walk away. And I can't hand over 5 women to a man who brands them like cattle." Slade's face went cold. "Those brands mark my property." "Then your property rights end where human dignity starts." Slade gestured to his men. "Search the barn." Elwood cocked the rifle. The sound cracked through the morning like a bone breaking. "First man who steps past this fence gets a bullet." Silence. 8 guns against 1. The math was simple. The outcome wasn't. Holt's voice came careful. "Mr. Taggart, lower your weapon. Don't make this uglier than it has to be." "Already ugly, Marshal. Question is, you gonna enforce an ugly law, or remember why you took that badge?" The question hung in the frozen air. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Slade pulled out a folded document. "I'll give you till sunrise tomorrow, Taggart. You hand them over, or I come back with 20 men and burn this place to ash. Your choice." He wheeled his horse. His men followed. Holt lingered. For a moment, something like regret crossed his face. "I'll be back at dawn," he said quietly. "For your sake. I hope they're gone by then." He rode away. Elwood stood alone in the yard. Sunrise was 12 hours away. 12 hours to decide if mercy was worth dying for. Behind him, the barn door creaked. Marjorie emerged from the shadows. "They come back," she said. Not a question. "Yeah. What we do?" Elwood looked at the southern horizon where Slade had disappeared. "We run, tonight, and we pray the mountains are kinder than men." The women climbed from the root cellar covered in dirt and spider webs. Marjorie came up last, eyes hard as flint. "How many men he bring tomorrow?" she asked. 20, he said. "Could be more." Elwood set the rifle against the wall, rubbed his face with both hands. The missing fingers ached. Always did when trouble came. "Can't fight that many." "Then we run. Tonight." "In this cold? Without supplies? You'll die before you reach the tree line." Clementine stepped forward, the fierce one, the one with rage in her eyes like banked coals. "Better than going back to that place." Elwood looked at each of them, broken, bruised, branded, but standing, refusing to bend. And he saw it then, the thing he'd lost 14 years ago when they buried Singing Bird in the frozen ground. Purpose. A reason to stand when falling would be easier. "There's a church," he said, 40 miles north. Fort Shaw, federal garrison. Captain Morrison runs it, honest man or was last I knew. He can hold you in protective custody while the law sorts this out." 40 miles, Marjorie repeated. "Through mountains. In winter. Yeah. We die, maybe. Maybe, but you'll sure as hell die if you stay." Oswin, the pregnant one, pressed a hand to her belly. Nobody else had noticed yet, but Elwood had seen that gesture before. Singing Bird used to touch herself the same way in those last months. "How long before baby?" he asked quietly. Oswin's eyes went wide. The others turned to stare at her. You didn't tell them, Elwood said. She shook her head, tears starting. I ashamed. From the camp. From the men who... She couldn't finish. Marjorie moved to her, pulled her close. Spoke in Blackfeet. Low and fierce. Whatever she said, it made Oswin cry harder, but the good kind of crying. The kind that let poison out. We protect her, Marjorie said to Elwood. We protect the baby, whatever it take. Then we leave in 3 hours, soon as it's full dark. He moved to the corner where he kept his gear. Need to pack light, food, blankets, ammunition, nothing else. Beatrice, the mute one, touched his arm. When he turned, she held up Singing Bird's blanket, the one he'd given her last night. She tried to hand it back. Keep it, he said. His throat felt tight. She'd want you to have it. Beatrice's eyes filled. She nodded once, folded the blanket carefully, held it against her chest. They worked in practiced silence. Elwood filled canvas sacks with dried meat, hardtack, coffee, 3 canteens of water. He counted ammunition, 32 rounds for the rifle, 18 for the pistol. Not enough if it came to a fight, but enough to make men think twice. Dot, the youngest, was drawing again in the frost on the window. This time, a path leading to a cross. Smart girl, Elwood muttered. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The horses in the barn answered with nervous snorts. Clementine was sharpening a kitchen knife on a whetstone. The sound, scritch, 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 filled the spaces between heartbeats. You know how to use that? Elwood asked. She looked up at him. I learned fast. 2 hours till dark. Elwood saddled the horses, only had 3. The women would have to double up. He was cinching the last strap when he heard it. Hoofbeats. Single rider, coming fast. Inside, he hissed. Now. The women scattered. Elwood grabbed the rifle, stepped onto the porch. His heart hammered against his ribs. Through the dying light, a horse appeared. The rider wore a Union coat. Marshal Holt, alone. Elwood's finger found the trigger. Holt raised both hands, reins loose, showing empty palms. I'm alone, Holt called. No weapon drawn. That's supposed to make me trust you? No, but what I'm about to tell you might. Elwood didn't lower the rifle. You got about 30 seconds before I decide you're a scout for Slade's men. Holt dismounted slowly, hands still visible. Those contracts Slade showed me today, I've been looking into them for 3 months. Ever since a Blackfeet woman died in his camp and her body turned up in the river with brands all over her back. The rifle lowered an inch. Keep talking. The signatures don't match. Different handwriting on every contract. And the dates? Some of these women would have been children when they supposedly signed. I think Slade forged the whole lot. Then arrest him. Can't. Not without proof that'll stand in territorial court. His word against mine right now, and he's got the governor in his pocket. Half the judges, too. Holt's voice dropped. But if those women testify in federal court... Marjorie stepped into the doorway. Holt saw her and his jaw tightened. Sweet Jesus, he breathed. What did he do to you? She didn't answer, just stood there, bruises visible even in the fading light, rope burns on her wrists, the brand on her shoulder showing through the torn shirt. The silence said everything. Get them to Fort Shaw, Holt said, turning back to Elwood. Federal garrison. Captain Morrison's honest, won't let Slade touch them. I'll build a case, get the contracts examined by a federal judge, but they need to stay alive long enough to testify. Fort Shaw's 80 miles. I know. Through mountain passes. In winter. Holt's face was grim. But it's the only jurisdiction Slade can't corrupt. Why are you helping us? Elwood asked. You said the law's clear. The law's supposed to protect people, not enslave them. Holt met his eyes. I took an oath, Mr. Taggart. Not to Garrick Slade, to justice. Clementine appeared beside Marjorie, the knife still in her hand. Even you? She asked. You one of the good ones? Holt looked at her, really looked, saw the anger, the fear, the terrible hope underneath. If I wanted you caught, he said quietly, you'd already be in chains. How we know you not lead us into trap? Marjorie asked. You don't, but I'm the best chance you've got. Holt pulled out a folded map, spread it on the porch rail. North Trail's watched. Slade's got men on the main road. You'll have to go through Bear Pass. Nobody patrols it in winter on account of the avalanches. It's dangerous, but it's clear. Elwood studied the map. Bear Pass. He'd gone through there once, back in '63. Nearly died doing it. That pass is a death trap. So staying here. Hard to argue with that. Holt rolled up the map, handed it to Elwood. You leave tonight, you might make Fort Shaw in 3 days. Maybe 4 if the weather holds. And if Slade comes at dawn? I'll be here. I'll tell him I searched the place, found nothing. That'll buy you a few hours. Holt swung back onto his horse. After that, he'll figure it out and come after you, so you'd better move fast. He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Be careful who you trust. Slade has people everywhere. Even folks who seem friendly might be on his payroll. With that, he rode into the gathering dark. The women gathered around Elwood, 5 pairs of eyes asking the same question. We trust him? Marjorie said. Elwood folded the map, tucked it inside his coat. Don't have much choice. Sometimes the enemy wears a badge, and sometimes the badge wears a conscience. They left at midnight. 5 women, 1 old man, 3 horses, and a prayer that the mountains would be kinder than men. The temperature had dropped to the point where breathing hurt. Stars overhead looked close enough to touch, cold and indifferent. Elwood led, Marjorie riding behind him. She'd proven to be a natural rider, adjusting to the horse's rhythm like she'd been born to it. The others followed, Beatrice and Oswin on the second horse, Clementine and Dot on the third. Nobody spoke. Sound carried too far in the frozen air. They rode through pine forest, snow-heavy branches blocking the starlight. Elwood picked his way carefully, following game trails and creek beds that wouldn't leave clear tracks. Every snap of a twig made his shoulders tense. Behind them, maybe 3 miles back, he saw it. Orange glow, faint but unmistakable. Torches. Slade's men were already moving. Either they hadn't believed Holt or someone else had talked. Murphy, probably. That gossiping bastard. They coming? Marjorie whispered in his ear. I know. How long we have? Hour, maybe less. The horses pushed harder. Breath steamed from their nostrils. The forest thinned, gave way to open ground. Dangerous, exposed, but faster. Dot, riding behind Clementine, pointed back the way they'd come. Through the trees, moving lights. At least 6, maybe more. Faster, Elwood said. They ran. The horses' hooves pounded frozen ground. Wind cut like knives. Behind them, the torches spread out, trying to flank them. Then Elwood saw it ahead. The river. Ice covered it, but patches of black water showed through. The spring thaw had started early this year, making the crossing treacherous. We can't, Clementine said, seeing it. Ice won't hold. Neither will we if we stop. The dogs found their scent then. Barking echoed through the trees, getting closer. No choice now. Spread out, Elwood ordered. Don't bunch up. Test each step. If the ice cracks, back up slow. Don't run. Marjorie went first. The ice groaned under the horse's weight but held. She made it 10 feet before... Crack! Spiderweb fractures shot out in every direction. She froze. Easy, Elwood called. Slow steps. Angle left. Ice looks thicker there. She guided the horse left. The ice held. One by one they crossed. Beatrice and Oswin went next. Oswin was crying, terrified, but Beatrice held her steady. Then Clementine and Dot. Elwood came last. Behind him, Slade's men reached the riverbank. 8 riders, torches high, faces visible in the orange light. Slade himself sat at the center, his gold tooth catching the light. You can run, Taggart, he shouted across the water, but I know where you live. And when I'm done there won't be enough left to bury. The ice beneath Elwood groaned. Cracked. He kicked the horse forward. The animal lunged. The ice gave way. Freezing water surged up through the break. But they made it to the far bank just as the whole section collapsed behind them. Slade's men couldn't follow. The ice was too broken, the current too strong, but Slade's voice carried across the water, cold as the wind. I'll find you, old man. I'll find you, and I'll make you watch while I take them back. 1 by 1. Elwood didn't answer, just turned his horse north and rode into the dark. Mercy don't travel alone. It carries the weight of every soul that ever tried to do right in a wrong world, and that weight gets heavier with every mile. They reached the abandoned trapper's cabin 2 hours before dawn. It sat in a clearing halfway up the mountain, half collapsed, but with one corner still sound enough to block the wind. Elwood dismounted, checked inside. No animals, no recent tracks. Safe enough for a few hours. We rest here till daylight, he said. Can't navigate the pass in the dark. Too many drop-offs. The women stumbled inside, exhausted beyond words. Clementine collapsed against the wall. Dot curled up beside her, already half asleep. Oswin's fever had worsened. She shook despite the layers of canvas wrapped around her. Need fire, Marjorie said. Too risky. Smoke will give us away. She'd die without warmth. Elwood looked at Oswin. Her lips had gone pale, eyes unfocused. He'd seen that look before. Fever taking hold, the kind that turned deadly fast. Small fire, he relented. In the corner, keep it low. While Marjorie built the fire with practiced hands, Beatrice worked on Oswin. She'd found yarrow and willow bark somehow during their ride, tucked them into her pockets. Now she chewed the bark into pulp, pressed it against Oswin's forehead. Elwood watched her work. You learned that from your people? Beatrice nodded, still didn't speak, hadn't said a word since they'd met. She trained as medicine woman, Marjorie said softly, feeding kindling to the growing flame. Before Slade take us, she was, how you say, apprentice to grandmother. What happened to the grandmother? Marjorie's face went hard. Slade happened. The fire caught, small but warm. Orange light danced on the cabin's rotted walls, made the shadows move like living things. They shared what food they had, dried meat, tough as leather, hardtack that had to be soaked in water to chew. Not much, but enough to quiet the worst of the hunger. Dot drew in the dust on the floor with her finger. Same pattern as before, the bird. Elwood sat beside her, his back against the wall. Every muscle ached. The cold had settled into his bones, into those missing fingers that never stopped hurting. Your wife, Marjorie said, settling across from him. How'd she die? For 14 years, he hadn't told the story. Not once, not to Murphy, not to the preachers who came through, not to himself in the mirror. But something about this night, this fire, these women, made the words come easier. Shoshone, he said. Name was Singing Bird. Met her during the wars. I was scouting for the army, tracking Cheyenne war parties. Found her in a canyon, tending to wounded, both sides. Didn't matter to her what flag they fought under, just saw people bleeding. He paused. The fire crackled. Nobody moved. Married her against orders. Army didn't approve. Her people didn't approve. Didn't matter. Had 2 good years. She got pregnant. He touched his chest, where the memory lived. Had a daughter. Little thing. Laughed at everything. What was her name? Marjorie asked gently. Morning Dove. His voice cracked on it. She was 2 when the settlers came through. Winter of '62. They thought Singing Bird was hiding weapons. She wasn't. She was just trying to keep our daughter warm. He stared into the fire. They set the cabin on fire, locked them inside. I was out tracking deer, came back to ashes. Clementine had woken, was listening now. They all were. Found them 3 days later in the snow where they'd tried to run. The cold had... He couldn't finish that part. Preserved them, like they were sleeping. I buried them where the snow never melts, so they'd always be comfortable. Marjorie was quiet for a long moment, then went, My father, Chief Iron Wing, he say when snow falls, it is tears of ancestors. They cry for the living. What do they cry for the dead? Nothing. The dead are home. It wasn't comfort exactly, but it was something. A way to carry the unbearable for one more breath. Why you tell us this? Clementine asked. Why now? Elwood looked at each of them. Because you asked, and because I reckon if we're going to die together on this mountain, you should know why I'm here. You here for dead wife, Marjorie said. For dead daughter. You save us to save them. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of living like I'm already buried. Oswin stirred, mumbled something in Blackfeet. Beatrice stroked her hair, kept the compress cool on her forehead. She calling for father again, Marjorie said. Thought you said you were orphans. That's what Slade told people. Marjorie's jaw tightened. She looked at the others, some silent conversation passing between them. Then she rolled up her sleeve. There on her inner forearm, a tattoo, 3 feathers and a mountain peak, done in traditional ink. We not orphans, she said. We daughters. Elwood's breath caught. He recognized that mark. Everyone in Montana Territory knew that mark. Iron Wing, he whispered. Yes. Sweet Jesus, you're the chief's daughters? He stood up, paced to the window, looked out at nothing. Do you know what that means? If Slade figures out who you really are? He know, Clementine said bitterly. Why you think he keep us? Why you think he brand us? We worth more dead than alive. He wait for right time to ransom us back to father, or kill us to start war. Does your father know you're alive? Marjorie shook her head. We kidnapped 6 months ago, during supply run to Fort Benton. Indian agent, corrupt man named Ferris, he drug us, sell us to Slade. We wake up in camp with brands on skin and chains on feet. Ferris told father we die in river accident, Clementine added. Father believe. He grieve. We let him think we dead. Safer that way. Safer? Elwood turned back to them. Your father is the most powerful chief in Montana. He has 300 warriors. If he knew, then war, Marjorie said simply. White soldiers come. More people die. Our people die. We already lose sister in camp. Slade's men, She stopped, couldn't continue. The cabin fell silent, except for the fire and Oswin's labored breathing. That's why we run, Marjorie finished. Not for us, for our people. To stop war before it start. Elwood sank back down, his mind reeling. These weren't just escaped slaves, they were diplomatic hostages. Pawns in a game, so much bigger than Slade's timber operation. The man who saved my life, Marjorie said. 12 years ago, Black River, Army raid on Shoshone refugees. One soldier, he helped children escape through Won't Pass, give them his coat, his water, nearly die himself. Elwood's head snapped up. My father was there, Marjorie continued. He see this soldier, he give him water, guide him to safety. He tell story many times, the white soldier with kind eyes who choose mercy over orders. That was you, Elwood breathed. My father say, a debt of mercy never ends. He look for that soldier for years, never find him. She looked at Elwood. Until now. The pieces fell into place, the cosmic machinery of it. 12 years ago, he'd saved Shoshone children. One of them must have been related to Marjorie's family. And now... I didn't do it for a reward, he said. We know. That why it matter. Beatrice suddenly stood, moved to the corner where Elwood's pack sat. She pulled out the sewing kit she'd been using, and for the next hour, while the others dozed, she worked on something. When she finished, she brought it to Elwood. Gloves, new ones. She'd sewn them from spare canvas and lined them with rabbit fur from somewhere. 5 fingers on each glove, even though he only had 8 fingers total. You didn't have to, he started. Safe, Beatrice said. One word, her first word. Barely a whisper, but it rang in the cabin like a church bell. Everyone woke, stared. Beatrice looked at Elwood, tears streaming down her face. Safe, she said again, stronger now. You make safe. We not run from you. We run with you. Elwood's throat closed up. He took the gloves, felt the careful stitching, the warmth already in them from her hands. Thank you, he managed. She nodded, then to everyone's shock she smiled. It was a small thing, just the corners of her mouth turning up, but it was the first time any of them had seen her do anything but flinch and weep. We should sleep, Marjorie said softly. Dawn comes soon, long climb ahead. They settled in, the fire burning low. Elwood sat first watch, the new gloves on his hands, rifle across his knees. For the first time in 14 years, he felt something other than guilt, purpose, connection, family, maybe. He looked at the 5 women, Iron Wing's daughters, yes, but also just 5 souls who'd chosen to keep walking when stopping would have been easier. Dot stirred in her sleep, reached out, found his boot, held on to it like an anchor. He didn't pull away. Dawn broke 2 hours later. Gray light filtered through the cabin's broken roof. Elwood woke the others, checked outside. No movement, no tracks. The pass waited ahead, steep and treacherous. They saddled up, started the climb. They were halfway up when Marjorie saw it first. Smoke, she said, pointing south. Elwood followed her finger. There, maybe 20 miles back, a thick black column rose into the morning sky. Too much smoke for a campfire. Too much smoke for anything except... That's my home, he said, voice flat. Hollowbrook Station. The cabin where Singing Bird had laughed, the barn where Morning Dove had taken her first steps, the shelf where the mended cup had sat for 14 years, all of it, burning. Slade had kept his promise. I'm sorry, Marjorie whispered. Elwood stared at the smoke, felt something break inside. Not his will, something else, the last chain keeping him tied to the past. Don't be, he said. That place was a tomb anyway. He turned the horse north, toward Fort Shaw, toward whatever came next. Behind them, his pass turned to ash. Ahead, the mountain pass waited, cold and unforgiving. And somewhere in the distance, carried on the wind, came the sound of drums. They reached Fort Shaw 3 days later, half frozen and delirious. The federal garrison sat on a bluff overlooking the Missouri River. Timber walls, watchtowers, and a flag that snapped in the wind like a gunshot. Captain Morrison met them at the gate, took one look at the women, and his face went hard. Who did this? He asked. Garrick Slade, Marjorie said. Morrison's jaw clenched. Get them to the medical tent, now. Soldiers rushed forward. The women were lifted from horses, carried inside. Elwood tried to follow, but his legs gave out. He'd been running on nothing but will for 3 days, and the well had finally run dry. Someone get this man hot coffee and a bed, Morrison ordered. The world tilted. Elwood felt hands catching him, voices echoing from far away. Then darkness. He woke 30 hours later in the fort's infirmary. Sunlight streamed through a window. For a moment he forgot where he was, reached for the rifle that wasn't there. Easy, a voice said. A young soldier sat by the door. You're safe, sir. The women too. Elwood sat up, every muscle screaming. How long? Day and a half. You were in bad shape. Frostbite, exhaustion, dehydration. The soldier handed him a tin cup of water. Captain wants to see you when you're able. The women? Recovering. The pregnant one's in rough shape, but the healer, Beatrice? She's been working on her, says the baby's strong. Elwood drained the cup, swung his legs over the cot. His new gloves sat folded on the side table. He put them on, felt their warmth. 2 days later, a soldier found him on the wall. Mr. Taggart, there's something you need to see. The soldier handed him a spyglass, pointed south. Through the lens, Elwood saw smoke, thick and black, rising from where Hollowbrook Station had been. Happened 2 days ago, the soldier said quietly. Slade's men, they waited to make sure you weren't coming back, then burned everything. I'm sorry, sir. Elwood lowered the spyglass. His hands didn't shake. Didn't feel anything at all. 14 years of silence. 14 years of ghosts singing Bird's Blanket. Gone. The mended cup? Gone. The cabin where his daughter took her first steps? Erased. Everything? He heard himself ask. Ashes. The soldier left him alone. Elwood stared south, watching his past turn to smoke on the horizon. Marjorie found him there an hour later. She stood beside him, quiet, then, I'm sorry. Ain't your fault. We ask you nothing, you give everything. Had nothing worth keeping anyway. Her hand shot out, grabbed his coat, spun him around. Fire in her eyes. You lie. You have memory, you have honor, you have name. Those things, they cannot burn. That cup was the last thing she touched. His voice cracked. Her blanket still smelled like her. I kept it folded because if I unfolded it, the smell would fade. And now it's... He couldn't finish. Marjorie's voice softened. Now it with her again. Maybe she cold. Maybe she need it. It wasn't comfort, but it was something. A way to bear the unbearable. My father have saying, Marjorie continued, man who lose his house still have his foundation. You are foundation, Elwood Taggart. We build on you. Before he could respond, a soldier came running up the stairs. Mr. Taggart, Marshal Holt just arrived. The soldier was pale. And he's got company, judges, prosecutors, and Slade, Elwood finished. Yes, sir. Marjorie's hand found his arm. What this mean? Means Slade didn't come here to burn things. He came here to bury us legal. They descended to the fort's main yard. A crowd had gathered, soldiers, settlers, trappers who'd come to trade. Marshal Holt stood with 2 men in black coats and a third in expensive fur. Garrick Slade smiled when he saw Elwood, gold tooth gleaming. There he is, Slade said loud enough for everyone to hear. The kidnapper himself. Captain Morrison stepped between them. Mr. Slade, you're on federal property. I'll thank you to watch your accusations. No accusation, Captain. Simple fact. That man stole my contracted laborers. I have warrants signed by a territorial judge. I've come to retrieve my property and see justice done. The crowd murmured. Some looked at Elwood with suspicion now. Those women aren't property, Morrison said. The law says different, and I've brought Judge Shaw to oversee proceedings, everything legal and proper. The older of the 2 black coats stepped forward, Judge Cornelius Shaw, severe and cold-eyed. Captain Morrison, I have authority from the territorial governor to convene court here. The charges are serious: harboring fugitives, obstruction of justice, kidnapping across territorial lines. Kidnapping. Elwood's voice cut through. I saved their lives. That, Shaw said, will be determined at trial, which begins at dawn tomorrow. He pulled out a document, handed it to Morrison. Mr. Taggart is to be held in custody until proceedings conclude, as are the 5 women, as material witnesses in recovered property pending judgment. They're under my protection, Morrison said. They're evidence, Captain, unless you want to obstruct federal court. Morrison's face went red, But he had no choice. Military jurisdiction bent to territorial law when a judge showed up with proper papers. Elwood felt hands on his arms. Soldiers, apologetic but firm, began to lead him toward the stockade. "Wait!" Marjorie pushed through the crowd. "He save us. This not right." A guard held her back. Elwood met her eyes. "Keep your dignity," he said quietly. "Whatever happens, you keep your dignity." They locked him in a cell. Stone walls, iron bars, a bucket in the corner. Through the small window, he could see stars coming out. On the wall outside, someone had posted a notice. Trial at dawn. Territory, Versus Taggart. Night fell. A candle burned down to nothing. Rats scratched in the corners. His breath fogged in the cold. Somewhere outside, Slade was laughing. And Elwood Taggart, who'd lost his home, his past, and now his freedom, sat in the dark and wondered if mercy had ever been worth the cost. Dawn came cold and mean. They dragged Elwood from the cell in shackles, wrist irons that bit into skin, leg chains that made him shuffle like a dog. The whole fort turned out to watch. Word had spread. The crowd numbered maybe 200, pressed close, smelling of tobacco and judgment. Captain Morrison had converted the command tent into a makeshift courtroom. Judge Shaw sat behind a camp table like it was a throne. 2 soldiers flanked him. The prosecutor, a weasel-faced man named Dunmore, shuffled papers. Marshal Holt stood to the side, face unreadable. Slade sat front row, arms crossed, smiling. The 5 women were corralled in a corner, guarded. Marjorie stood tallest, defiant. Beatrice held Oswin, who looked ready to collapse. Clementine gripped the bars of their holding pen, knuckles white. Dot pressed against Marjorie's side, eyes wide with fear. "Court is in session," Shaw announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The territory versus Elwood Taggart. Mr. Taggart, you are charged with the following: harboring fugitive laborers in violation of federal contract law, obstruction of justice, destruction of private property." "I didn't destroy anything," Elwood said. Shaw's gavel came down. "You will speak when spoken to. The final charge: kidnapping, removing contracted laborers across territorial lines without consent of their legal employer. They're not laborers, they're prisoners. That is for this court to decide." Shaw nodded to Dunmore. "Prosecutor, present your evidence." Dunmore stood, holding up a sheaf of papers. "Your Honor, I have here 5 legal contracts, properly signed and witnessed, binding these women to 3 years' labor at Slade Timber Camp. Taggart removed them illegally, endangering their lives in a winter crossing and depriving Mr. Slade of his contractual rights." Marshal Holt stepped forward. "Your Honor, I request permission to examine those contracts." Shaw waved permission. Holt took the papers, studied them carefully. His finger traced signatures, dates, witness marks. His face darkened. "Your Honor, these contracts are forgeries." The crowd gasped. Slade's smile flickered. "Forgeries?" Shaw's eyebrow raised. "That's a serious accusation, Marshal. And I have evidence. The signatures don't match. Different handwriting on each one. The dates are impossible. According to this, one woman signed when she was 10 years old. The witness names. I've checked the Fort Benton registry. These people don't exist." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some faces turned toward Slade. Suspicious now. "Furthermore," Holt continued, "these women bear brands. Branding a contract laborer is illegal under federal law. It constitutes slavery, which was abolished by—" "Marshal," Shaw interrupted, "do you have proof that Mr. Slade applied those brands?" "The women will testify." "The testimony of Indians against a white businessman?" Shaw's voice dripped contempt. "In a territorial court? Marshal, you know how this works?" Holt's jaw clenched. "Your Honor, unless you have a white witness who can verify your accusations, they remain speculation." "Then I'll find one." "You do that. Until then, we proceed." Shaw turned to Dunmore. "Does the prosecution have witnesses?" "We do, Your Honor." Dunmore smiled. "The prosecution calls Luther Jerome." The crowd parted. Elwood's blood went cold. Luther Jerome walked to the front, 40 years old, thin as a rail, eyes downcast. Silas's son, the boy Elwood had pulled from a burning barn in '68, the boy who owed him everything. "No," Elwood breathed. Luther wouldn't look at him. "Mr. Jerome," Dunmore said, "please tell the court what you witnessed." Luther's voice came out flat, rehearsed. "I was traveling through Hollowbrook Station 3 weeks ago, stopped to rest at Mr. Taggart's property. I saw him with 5 women matching the description of Mr. Slade's missing workers. And what were they doing? Mr. Taggart was negotiating with another man. I heard them discussing prices, amounts of money. I believe Mr. Taggart was attempting to sell the women himself. The crowd erupted, shouting, gasps. Elwood stood, chains rattling. That's a goddamn lie, Shaw's gavel thundered. Order, Mr. Taggart, another outburst and you'll be gagged. Luther, Elwood's voice broke. Look at me. Luther finally raised his eyes. They were wet, guilty, ashamed, but he didn't recant. I'm sorry, El, Luther whispered. I didn't want to believe it either, but I saw what I saw. How much? Elwood asked quietly. How much did he pay you? Luther flinched. Dunmore stepped forward. Your Honor, Mr. Jerome's testimony proves that Mr. Taggart wasn't rescuing these women, he was attempting to profit from them. He removed them from Mr. Slade's camp, not out of mercy, but greed. The crowd turned ugly. Someone spat. Someone else shouted, Hang him! Marjorie screamed in Blackfeet, threw herself against the bars. Guards held her back. Beatrice was crying silently, hands pressed to her mouth. Clementine looked ready to kill everyone in the tent. Shaw banged his gavel until silence returned. Does the defense have witnesses to refute this testimony? Elwood looked at Luther, at the man he'd saved, at the betrayal written in every line of his face. I thought I did, Elwood said. Shaw consulted his papers. Very well. In the matter of the territory versus Elwood Taggart, given the evidence presented and the testimony of a credible witness, this court finds the defendant guilty on all counts. The words landed like a hammer. Sentence to be carried out at dawn, death by hanging. Silence, absolute, crushing. Then chaos, shouting, crying, soldiers moving to contain the crowd. Marjorie's scream cut through everything. No! He save us! This not justice! Guards pulled her back, dragged all 5 women towards separate holding cells. As they led Elwood past Luther, he stopped. How much? He asked again. Luther's face crumpled. $500. Enough to save my father's church. Hope it was worth it. It wasn't. They dragged Elwood toward the stockade. As he passed the women's holding area, Dot reached through the bars, touched his hand. He stopped, looked down at her, saw Mourning Dove's face, his daughter's eyes. Don't let them take your names, he said, voice breaking. You hear me? Whatever happens, you keep your names. Dot nodded, tears streaming. They locked him back in the cell. Through the window, he could see them building the gallows, hammering, sawing, testing the rope. Someone hung a sign. Execution at dawn. Kidnapper and thief. That night, the moon rose full and cold over Fort Shaw. In the cell, Elwood sat with his back against the stone wall, Beatrice's gloves on his hands. He thought about Singing Bird, about Mourning Dove, about a mended cup that didn't exist anymore, about 5 women who'd asked him not to let them starve, and how trying to keep that promise had cost him everything. Outside, the ropes swayed in the wind. Justice, they called it. But justice don't usually smell like lies and taste like blood money. 3 hours before dawn, hoofbeats shattered the silence. A single rider, coming hard and fast. The gate guards challenged him, but the voice that answered made them step aside. Open this gate. I'm Silas Jerome, and I got business with Judge Shaw. Elwood heard it from his cell, recognized that voice, old, raspy, furious. Luther's father, the preacher who'd married him and Singing Bird 30 years ago, boots on wood, shouting, commotion spreading through the fort like wildfire. Where's Morrison? Where's that snake of a judge? Where's my boy? A lamp appeared outside Elwood's cell. Captain Morrison's face followed, then Silas, 70 years old, travel-worn, eyes blazing with righteous anger. El, Silas said, gripping the bars. I came as fast as I could. Silas, my boy lied, under oath, about a man who saved his life. The old preacher's voice shook. I'm gonna fix it. It's done. Sentence is passed. Nothing's done till the rope tightens. Silas turned to Morrison. Get me Shaw, now, and Marshal Holt. I got evidence that'll burn this whole circus down. 10 minutes later, they'd roused Shaw from his quarters. The judge arrived furious, half-dressed, flanked by soldiers. Holt came running from the barracks. They gathered in Morrison's office. No crowd this time, no spectacle. Just 6 men and the truth. Silas threw a leather satchel on the desk. It landed with a heavy thump. Open it, Silas commanded. Shaw's face was thunder. Preacher, it's 3 in the morning. This better be. Open it. Shaw opened it. Inside, a stack of documents. unstamped contract blanks, a confession letter, a tribal registry, and a bank receipt. Silas started pulling them out one by one. First, original contract blanks stolen from Slade's office by a clerk who grew a conscience, unsigned, undated, ready to be filled in with whatever name Slade wanted. He slapped them down. Second, confession from Indian Agent Ferris at Fort Benton. Says right here he took bribes from Slade. $500 per woman to forge transfer papers and keep his mouth shut. Another slap. Third, Blackfeet Tribal Registry. Shows these 5 women as daughters and nieces of Chief Ironwing, not orphans, not volunteers, kidnapping victims. Shaw's face had gone pale. And fourth, Silas held up the bank receipt. Deposit slip from Slade Timber Company to Luther Jerome, $500, dated 2 days before the trial. Silence. My son lied, Silas said, voice breaking. Slade bought his testimony, and I brought the receipt to prove it. Holt stepped forward, studied the documents. His face hardened. Your Honor, this changes everything. Where did you get these? Shaw demanded. A man with a conscience don't ask for sources. He asks for truth. Silas leaned on the desk. These women aren't contract laborers. They're the daughters of a sovereign chief kidnapped and enslaved. And Elwood Taggart is innocent. Shaw studied the papers, his careful judge's mind working through implications. If he dismissed this evidence, he'd be complicit in slavery. If he accepted it, he'd have to arrest Slade. And Slade had powerful friends. But the documents were real, and Morrison's fort was federal jurisdiction. Marshal Holt, Shaw said finally, arrest Garrick Slade. Charges: conspiracy, kidnapping, perjury, human trafficking, and falsifying federal documents. With pleasure. Holt headed for the door, but Silas wasn't done. There's one more thing, the old preacher said. Something Elle don't even know. He turned to Elwood, who'd been brought from the cell, to hear this. You remember Black River, 1864, when you helped those Shoshone children escape the cavalry raid? Yeah, some Blackfeet chief helped me after, gave me water, showed me the pass. That chief was Ironwing. Silas pulled out a worn journal. I was missionary to the Blackfeet back then, kept records. Ironwing told me about it, said he met a white soldier with kind eyes who chose mercy over orders. He's been looking for that soldier ever since. Elwood's breath caught. Those Shoshone children you saved? Silas continued. 3 of them were Ironwing's nephews, his sister's boys. The cosmic machinery clicked into place. 12 years ago, Mercy. Now, Mercy returned. You saved his blood, Silas said. Now you've saved his daughters. And when he finds out you're alive, that you've been protecting them, he'll come. He already knows, Morrison said quietly. Everyone turned. Morrison pointed toward the fort's north wall. Scouts reported it an hour ago. 50 Blackfeet warriors, maybe more. Camped 5 miles out. They've been shadowing the fort for 2 days. How? Elwood asked. Marjorie's voice came from the doorway. She'd been released when Shaw ordered it. I send word, before we leave cabin, smoke signal, old way, tell father we alive. She looked at Elwood. He coming for his daughters, but also for you, to honor debt. Shaw stood, suddenly understanding the stakes. This wasn't just about 5 women anymore. This was about treaties, sovereignty, and whether a white court would do right by a chief's family. Release Taggart, Shaw ordered, immediately. The shackles came off. Elwood rubbed his wrists where the iron had bit, looked at Silas. You rode through the night to save me. Rode 3 days straight. Silas's eyes were wet. My boy sinned, but that don't mean I have to. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the sky, and from the north, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of drums, war drums, or maybe, just maybe, drums of justice. The drums grew louder as the sun rose. Fort Shaw's walls filled with soldiers, rifles ready. Captain Morrison stood on the parapet, spyglass to his eye, watching the tree line. How many? Shaw asked, standing beside him. 50, maybe 60, all mounted, all armed. Morrison lowered the glass. And they're not attacking, they're waiting. For what? Permission to approach, I'd wager. Marjorie climbed the ladder to the wall, Elwood and the other women following. When she saw the riders, her breath caught. At the center, on a painted war horse, sat a man in his 50s, eagle feathers in his hair, beaded coat, face painted with ashen ochre. He held a white flag, not surrender, but parley. Father, Marjorie whispered. Morrison gave the order. Open the gates. Let him enter, alone. The gates swung wide. Chief Ironwing rode through, back straight, head high. His warriors remained outside, silent as stones. He dismounted in the center of the yard. Every eye was on him. Then he saw them. Marjorie, Beatrice, Clementine, Oswin, Dot, his daughters. For a moment, the great chief just stood there. His face, weathered, strong, carved by wind and war, crumpled like paper. Natoi, he breathed. My daughters. They ran to him, all five at once. He opened his arms and they crashed into him, sobbing, holding onto him like he might disappear. Ironwing's shoulders shook. His voice broke into Blackfeet words Elwood couldn't understand. But he understood the tone, relief, grief, joy, all tangled together. The whole fort watched in silence. Even the hardest soldiers looked away, giving the moment its privacy. Finally, Ironwing pulled back, held each daughter's face in his hands, studied them, saw the brands, the scars, the weight they carried. His expression went from grief to rage in a heartbeat. He turned to Morrison. Who did this? Before Morrison could answer, a commotion erupted near the stockade. Garrick Slade had broken free, bribed a guard, got hold of a knife. He burst into the yard, wild-eyed, desperate. Nobody moves! He grabbed Oswin, pulled her back, knife to her throat. I walk out of here, or she dies. Ironwing's hand went to his tomahawk. Soldiers raised rifles. Marjorie screamed, Wait! Elwood stepped forward, hands raised, unarmed. Stay back, old man, Slade snarled. This is your fault. I built an empire. These women are nothing. You're nothing. Maybe, Elwood said calmly, moving closer. But you're something worse than nothing. You're a man who sells souls and calls it business. I'm a man who survives, and if I go down, I'm taking... Oswin moved. Fast. Bit his arm hard enough to draw blood. Broke free. Slade lunged at Elwood, knife raised. The shot came from the wall. Marshal Holt, rifle smoking. Slade dropped, knife clattering on stone. He clutched his chest, blood spreading. Told you I believed in justice, Holt said. Elwood knelt beside Slade, watched the light fade from his eyes. No mercy, no malice, just truth. You could have chosen different, Elwood said quietly. That's the tragedy. Slade's mouth moved, tried to speak, failed, then he was gone. Beatrice ran to Oswin, checked her for injuries, found none. But Oswin was shaking, hand pressed to her belly. Ironwing saw, understood immediately. He knelt before her, placed his hand over hers. You carry child, he said in careful English. Oswin nodded, tears streaming. From the camp, from the men who... I am ruined, father, shamed. No. Ironwing's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. You are mother. You bring life from darkness. This child... He pressed her hand gently. Is Blackfeet. Is ours. You carry hope. That is not shame. That is power. Oswin collapsed against him, sobbing. This time, relief. Ironwing stood, turned to Elwood. They faced each other, chief and scout, two men from different worlds who'd chosen the same path. Ironwing spoke in Blackfeet. Silas translated. He says, You are the man from Black River, the soldier with kind eyes. I am. You saved the children. You saved my daughters. You lost your home, your freedom, nearly your life. Ironwing stepped closer. Why? Elwood looked at the five women, bruised, branded, but standing, alive, free. Because they asked me not to let them starve. And I couldn't. Not again. Again? Had a daughter once. Couldn't save her. Thought maybe if I saved yours, his voice broke. Thought maybe it'd make the weight lighter. Ironwing studied him. Then, to everyone's shock, he knelt. The great chief, leader of 300 warriors, knelt before a broken-down scout in a federal fort. A debt of life never ends, Ironwing said in English. You return my heart to me. You are no longer stranger. You are family. He pulled a beaded rope from his coat, blue and white and red, each bead representing a life, a story, a bond. He placed it around Elwood's neck. You are Natoyam, he who returns the lost. Elwood's throat closed. He couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Marjorie stepped forward, tied the rope with careful hands. We choose you, she said, like you choose us. And maybe that's all redemption ever is, not earning it, just accepting it when it's offered. The sun climbed higher. The drums outside shifted, no longer war drums, but celebration. Ironwing helped Elwood to his feet. They stood together in the center of the yard, surrounded by two nations watching. "You have no home," Ironwing said. "We give you one. You have no family. We give you ours." Dot ran forward, grabbed Elwood's hand, held on tight, and Elwood Taggart, who'd been dead inside for 14 years, felt something crack open in his chest where his heart used to be. Not breaking, blooming. That was winter of 1876, 10 years ago now. Some folks still talk about it, the winter 5 women walked through a blizzard and found a man who'd forgotten how to care. About the old scout who stood against the law when the law was wrong. About a chief who repaid mercy with mercy. I'm Silas Jerome, 80 years old now, and I'm telling you this story because some truths don't die with the people who lived them. Elwood Taggart spent the rest of his days between two worlds, winters at Hollowbrook Station, which Ironwing's people helped him rebuild, stronger than before. Summers with the Blackfeet, teaching young ones to track, to survive, to choose right when wrong would be easier. Marjorie became a medicine woman, married a warrior from a neighboring band, has 4 children now, all fierce as their mother. Beatrice found her voice again. Not just words, songs. She sings at councils, at weddings, at funerals. Her songs carry for miles. They say even the mountains listen. Clementine trained as a warrior, rides with the scouts. Nobody crosses her twice. Dot paints the stories of her people. Pictures that don't need words. Her drawings hang in councils and cabins across 3 territories. And Oswin? She had a boy. Named him Elwood Ironwing. He's 10 now. Strong as his mother, gentle as the man who saved her. Last I saw him, he was sitting on Elle's knee, learning to track deer and draw birds in the dirt. My boy Luther never took another dollar from anyone. Gave his life to service, trying to pay back what he stole. Some debts you carry to the grave. Now folks ask me, was it worth it? All that pain, all that loss, all that standing when falling would have been easier. And I tell them, mercy ain't something you do once and walk away from. It's a debt you keep paying till you're planted in the ground. And somehow, in the paying, you become richer than you ever were. Elwood lost his home, but he gained a family, lost his solitude, but gained his soul back. See, justice don't need blood, it just needs witnesses. People willing to stand in the cold and say, not today, not on my watch. If this story touched you, I'd be honored to know where you're listening from. Leave a word, a thought, a prayer. Till next time, may your dignity carry you through, and may you never walk past someone freezing when you got fire to share.